All right, Nick, let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons earlier this offseason when the Falcons bring in Kirk Cousins. Feel like Falcons fans, and I think us at times as well, thought this was going to be the change that saves the franchise. Kirk Cousins was going to be that guy. And I think at times he has been good this season, but lately he has not been so good. We have some really interesting information today from a very smart person that describes exactly why this is, why Kirk Cousins hasn't been as good as he has been advertised as coming to this season. But before we get into that, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. Nick, as I alluded to, Falcons, Kirk Cousins, a lot of issues going on in the latest weeks, but we've got some really interesting information to explain what's going on there. Let's hop on into the tweet and we'll talk more about it on the other side. This is from over on X, tweet from @BrettColeman, who's great. He has a lot of great takes. Very smart guy when it comes to analyzing football. It says, when the Falcons run from under center, which isn't often, those runs go to the right over 70% of the time. The league average under center runs only goes right 46% of the time. Majority of runs go left, so you can boot to the right off of it for a right-handed quarterback. I suspect the Falcons go right because Kirk can't push off his right foot very well to open up for a handoff or ball fake to the left. I think this is some really interesting information that may open up the picture for fans as why the Falcons are very predictable at times in what they're doing on offense. Nick, I know you've got an interesting take on this one. I'm curious what your thoughts are, but before we get to you, Falcons fans, in the comment section below, I'm kind of curious, new coaching regime, new quarterback, things are going, we're pretty far into the season, so I want to know, what are your thoughts on this offense? Is it too predictable? Do they need to switch things up? I mean, the losing, that really helps, but take a really objective approach to this one. Let us know in the comment section below what your thoughts are on the offense, and if you don't like it, what you think they may be doing to fix it. Let us know in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what do you think about this tweet?
So I think this is showing, what we all kind of worried about Kirk Cousins was that the Achilles injury was going to limit his mobility and his ability to perform consistently once teams figured him out. And that's what happens every year in the National Football League. Every position, every player, whether it's a rookie or a guy on a new team, comes out. There could be a few games where he's going to learn the ropes and then he gets hot. Then he's playing great. But then the opposition, they get enough film on him. They see what he can do, what he can't do, and then they counter to stop that. And then you're just dead to rights. And that's what the Falcons have been offensively over the past 3 weeks, scoring 17 against New Orleans, 6 against the Denver Broncos, and 13 against the Chargers. Kirk Cousins with 4 picks in that disastrous pick 6 last week. It is getting bad and bad fast for Kirk Cousins and the Falcons offense because teams have figured him out. That's just the reality. And look, the unfortunate reality also on top of this, Achilles injuries don't ever really turn to the positive. We see this with Aaron Rodgers. He ain't getting better, folks. Older quarterbacks with these injuries, it could be the final nail in the coffin in their careers. I hate to say it, but it just kind of looks that way with Kirk Cousins. Now, what does that mean for the Atlanta Falcons? It means Michael Penix Jr., in my opinion, has to see the field a lot this season, has to get ready. He will be, my prediction right now, starting quarterback day 1, 2025 for the Atlanta Falcons. And by the way, I think the Falcons knew this was a huge risk, right? There's a huge chance of this happening. That's why they drafted Penix Jr. in the first round. Everyone was screaming for Jared Verse, rightly so in some respects, because Verse has had an incredible year for the Rams. He looks like a superstar. But I think the Falcons understood that Kirk Cousins with the Achilles, there was always a chance that he would not last his whole contract, and maybe not even most of the contract. Heck, so far, it doesn't look like he's going to last the end of the season in terms of playing at a starter level. I mean, he's not playing how they expected. He's not even playing at a starter level right now, folks. It is really bad for Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons. I think this quarterback situation, the Falcons have the solution. They're going to have to decide when to make the change. If they lose to the Minnesota Vikings this weekend, there is a chance they flip that and go to Michael Penix Jr. to finish out the year. Because one thing we cannot have happen if you're the Atlanta Falcons, you can't have another Arthur Smith-like finish. I felt like the last couple of years with Smith running the show in Atlanta, they were in the thick of it with maybe 10, 11, 12 games in, and then they fell apart towards the end. The Falcons are trending in that direction right now. Kirk Cousins, his inability to work around the long-term ramifications of his injury is the clear reason why. He's so predictable. This offense is so limited because of it. Defenses has adjusted. It's time, I think, in the very near future to make a change. And I think certainly in the out years, starting in 2025, Kirk Cousins will not be the starting quarterback. Michael Penix Jr. will be.
Yeah, Nick, and I think what you alluded to, I think that's a key point here as far as the Arthur Smith like finish, where the wheels start to fall off at the end.
Yeah.
And we've seen this season. We saw the startup weeks 1 through 4. It was slow, but it was decent. There was some good there. Then we get to the middle of the season, I'd say weeks 5 through 8. There was some really good games in there for Kirk Cousins. You look at his PFF grades, he put out some really good numbers, 84.9 grade, a 90.9 grade. Really overall a good chunk of games for him. But we get to the last 4 games of this stretch. It seems like the wheels are starting to come off. It's like you allude to. People have gotten tape on this offense. People have gotten tape on Cousins. They can pick apart those tendencies and see what happens. You look here, 70, 60, 50, and then lately a 41.5 grade against the Chargers. We all know that game was unusually terrible. I would call that one a little bit of an anomaly with all the interceptions, but you just never know. It just seems like teams are really starting to dig in, getting to that playoff time. They're getting into the tape and they're finally figuring out this Atlanta offense because it seems like they are stagnant. I would wager to say in the NFL, you can't do anything 70% of the time. I don't care what it is. If you do it 70% of the time, you're gonna get figured out. And I think these are too good of athletes, too good of teams, too good of coaches to let them have that edge over you. I love when we talk about teams like the Lions. They run the same formation, but there's like 50 different variations of the plays that come out of those formations because they switch it up. They don't do anything the same anytime. They always keep you guessing. And from this little sample size here, we're saying, this isn't necessarily something the Falcons do all the time, but when they do it, here, it probably spreads into the rest of their game plan. It's not fresh, it's not new, and they're not trying to be different. So I think this is a problem. It needs to be addressed, and I agree with you here. I think this is leaning towards the limitations of Kirk Cousins are going to be the opening of the door to the future of Michael Penix coming down the stretch.